Limp on in there, Barry, and turn to Psalm 139. Have you got Psalm 139, Nanny, back there? Have you looked it up or not? All right. We're about all be on the same page. That Hunter Love, man, he's moving and grooving up there, touching buttons everywhere. To me, they just say, do not touch the buttons. Keep your mitts off the buttons. Okay, we're rolling. This is one of my favorite psalms because this psalm is a great prayer to God that talks about how deeply God knows us and the wonderfulness of God's knowledge of us and our relationship with God. He begins the psalm by talking, of course, directly to God, and you'll notice all the way down here, he's talking to you, to you, to you. This is God he's talking to, the Lord. He's down here. O Lord, you. And what about the Lord that is really the focus of this particular song? Well, he says, you have searched me. So regardless of what's been on your mind lately, God has already searched that out. God is fully aware of what's been on your mind. You've known me. God's known me ever since. He knows me inside out. David is aware that God knows him. You know my sitting down. See, every time I sit down, you know it. Every time I rise up, you know it. There's never a thing that you do that God doesn't know. He knows me intimately. Notice, you understand my thought. Notice up here in verse 1, he said, you searched me and known me. Now he says, you understand my thought afar off. God knows what we're thinking. Now, my wife knows my thinking. Almost always, she knows what I'm thinking. It's kind of scary. My daughters do sometimes too, and that's kind of scary. They know what I'm thinking before I do, but God really knows what I'm thinking, no matter what. If I have ugly ideas or thoughts about other people, God knows it. If I have the wrong motives, God knows it. If I have good thoughts in my mind, God knows it. If I'm afraid, he knows it. Notice he says, you understand my path. God sees where I'm going. Where are you going right now in your life? If God saw your trajectory or the direction of your life, where are you going? You know, God looks down and he sees me and he sees you and he says, you know, you're kind of going in a different direction right now. I'm not sure that's good. He knows my lying down. See, every time I go to bed, he sees me. Are acquainted with all my ways. Notice how are acquainted here, and comprehend here, and understand here, and know here, and searched me and known me. These are all different ways of basically saying the same thing, aren't they? God, you search, you know, you understand, you comprehend, you are acquainted. There's a level of understanding that God has, the total global understanding. You know, so often I meet somebody, maybe one of you, and maybe you're having a bad day and you have a certain look on your face or you say something, and I may get a wrong impression altogether of where you are. But God knows everything, all my history. He knows everything I've been going through. He knows all about my mind and why I'm where I am. God really knows it intimately, completely. He knows it. He understands it. And notice there's not a word on my tongue, he says. But, oh Lord, again he says, you know it altogether. Why did you say that? Remember Jesus said, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. So our words come from our heart, and God knows what's behind those words. Words are just words. You'll get tired of me saying this little phrase, but it impressed me so much when I heard it. I'm a word guy, if you don't know that. But one guy said to me a long time ago, he said, words are the buckets into which ideas are poured and transferred from one mind to another. What does a word mean? It means what I mean by it, right? And a word means whatever you mean by it. And we may not mean the same thing at all, but God knows not only the word, but he knows what I mean by it. He knows the intentions behind it. He knows what's driving it. He knows what's underneath it. So God knows all these things. He's talking still to the Lord down here. You have hedged me in. You have hemmed me in, say some verses, behind and before. So I go over this way, there's the Lord. He's right there seeing me. I try to go this way, there he is. He's on that side of me as well. I can't get away from the Lord. And when he considers all this, when David meditates on this, he says, such knowledge. What knowledge? Well, the fact that you've searched me and known me, that you know my sitting down and rising up, that you understand my thoughts, you understand where I'm going, you're acquainted with all my ways. See, this kind of global knowledge about me is too wonderful for me. I can't attain it. I can't imagine it. Can you? And yet God knows. God sees every sparrow. You know, his eye is on the sparrow, the old song, and his eye is on you and me. So, the psalmist then asks a question, having reflected on that knowledge that God has of us. And the question is basically, where? Where? See, he's talking about where could he go? Where could he flee? Where could he remove himself where God would not know? Notice what he's thinking about how he could leave. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? Totally different subject. You know, I've thought a lot about the Spirit of God and the way the word Holy Spirit and the Spirit of God is used in the Old Testament. But this passage is one of those that really makes me think. Where can I go from your spirit? The parallel phrase says, where can I go from your presence? So what is the Spirit of God? It's the presence of God with somebody. Psalm 51, similarly, cast me not away from your presence. Take not your Holy Spirit from me. So the Holy Spirit is God being present with you in a particular way, when he's right there with you. You know, we sing the old song, be with me, Lord. But there's a way and a fellowship in which God is with somebody who's his child, much more than he's with somebody who's not his child, because those people are separated from God by sin. So here he says, where could I go from your spirit? Where could I flee from your presence, as if I wanted to you? And then he says, what if I do this? If I do this, notice, if I do this down here, see, if I say this. See, all of these ifs that you find in the poetry going down are scenarios by which we might be able to get away from God, or we might be able to hide from God if that were possible. So let's look at these ifs. I could ascend into the heaven, go way up high, you know. You've flown, you've looked down at the clouds. Some people have even gone into the orbit of the earth. I've been on high mountains. You ascend into the heavens. Notice the conclusion that he makes here. You are there. And then he says, if I make my bed in hell. This is a bad translation here. I guess this is the ESV. I don't know what it is. But the word is Sheol in Hebrew. Sheol. Sheol means the grave. It means it way down in the earth. It means down in the deepest cave. That's Sheol. He doesn't mean hell like damnation hell. He means if I went to the highest mountain or if I went into the deepest cave. See, that's what he's trying to say. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. See, the presence of the Lord is not bound by geography. If I take the wings of the morning and I dwell, he says, in the uttermost parts of the sea. Now, that's a long ways out there. If you've ever been out to sea, I'm not good at sea, by the way. I get seasick out to sea because those waves are big. And I remember one time a guy wanted to take me halibut fishing off the coast of British Columbia, and it was kind of stormy out there in those waves and everything. And he said, you want to go? I'll take you if you want to go. And I said, there's no way I'm going out there in a boat like this. No way. That was the biggest, most monstrous-looking thing I'd ever seen out there on that vast, open, cold, freezing sea with the chopping waves. And I said, you've got to be joking me. I'm not going out there. But David said, if you go and you dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, he says, even there. See, he's talking about where? Even there, your hand shall lead me and your right hand shall hold me. Paul was on the ocean and he prayed to God, and God was right there. And Jonah was on the ocean and God was right there. Some people say, well, maybe the darkness will hide me. See, if I say, surely the darkness will hide me, even the night shall be light around me. And the book of Thessalonians says, those that sleep at night, those that get drunk at night. Those other people that do other sins, they do it at night. But we are not of the night nor of the darkness. We are the children of the day. But there's no darkness that can hide us from what the Lord is and where the Lord is and of what the Lord is aware. He says, indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day, and the darkness and the light are both alike to you. So there's no place I can go from God. Man, I'm glad about that. I've told you many times years ago, Cindy and I woke up in Panama, not Panama City, Florida, but Panama in Central America. This was when General Noriega was in power. And we looked down from the window, and his troops were marching through the streets with their weapons and everything like that. And people said, now don't go out or they'll cut you with a machete. And so I was glad that the Lord was there. I was really glad that the Lord was there. So we can't get away from God, and I'm so glad that we can go anywhere in the world, and the Lord is there. He's with us always. Now David is amazed at the Lord's intimate knowledge of him even when he was a baby. He's talking about God, and he says, you did these things. You, Lord, as he started out. See, I will praise you. God did all this. See, he was there. Your eyes. See, you. So what did God do? You formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I've thought about my mother some lately. Those of you that have lost your parents, you every once in a while there's a poignant moment where you just all of a sudden it hits you and you think about them, And I think about my mother, and she knew me from the very beginning. She knew everything about me. God knew me even more than she did in my mother's womb. And he thinks about the baby being formed in the mother's womb and says, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works. He's thinking about how the little baby grows in the womb. But God was there inside mother's womb. God was with me inside my mother's womb. God was there every step of the way when I was being put together in my mother's womb. God was right there just like he is. He says, you're right in front of me and you're right behind me. God was inside the mother's womb with the baby. Now, how could you possibly be for abortion if you read this, that God was intimately present inside the mother's body, inside of the mother's womb, with the formation every step of a baby, see? But that's how much God knows you. That's how much God knows me. He says, my frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, see, inside mama's tummy, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth, meaning down deep inside of her where nobody else can see. This is poetry, by the way. The Psalms, the songs that are in the songbook of God, Psalms, this is poetry, and it's written in poetic style, see? And so in the lowest parts of the earth doesn't literally mean down in the ground. It means deep inside of mama. And then he says, in your book, he says, your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book were all the days fashioned for me written, when as yet there was none of them. Now this phrase right here really intrigues me. God knows my beginning and my end. God knows the day and the moment of my death. God knew the time of my birth when I breathed my first breath. God knows when I'm going to breathe my last breath. He knows. I don't. I don't know if it's going to be this year or 10 years from now. I don't know, but God knows. He knows it all. He sees it all from the very beginning. That's how well he knows me. See? From my mother's womb to the last breath I breathe, and then even to my soul being with him in eternity. See, that's how much God knows me. Isn't that amazing? The psalmist reflected on this, and it's good to meditate on these things sometime, and he was blown away by all of this knowledge of God. What do you think of that? Well, the psalmist said, "How precious are your thoughts to me, O God." Now, isn't it neat to think about somebody that knows you that intimately? How great is the sum of them? Can you imagine knowing someone? I'm glad I don't know other people that well. God knows us all that well, every single one of us. You know, it'd be one thing if he just knew me from my mother's womb, but he knows Scott Taylor. Can you imagine knowing Scott Taylor from his mother's womb? I mean, that would be, yeah, but he knows him, and he knows all the rest of you, and he knows each one of us just that much. David is thinking about the amazingness of God's thoughts, and he said, if I could count them, God's thoughts, they would be more in number than the sand. And when I awake, I am still with you. This is really an interesting part of this poem right here. What I think is, I may not be right about this, but I think David is meditating on this at night. And he's thinking about all the wonderful thing God knows and how intimately God knows him and how God is always there. And then he goes to sleep. And then he wakes up the next morning and he says, God, you're still here. You're still right here with me. Isn't it wonderful to know that when we wake up in the morning, he's there? And when we wake up tomorrow morning, he'll be there. And when we wake up the next morning, think of the psalm we studied last week. I know you forgot it, but, O Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place throughout all the generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou didst form the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. My grandma, who died at 90-something, she woke up in the morning on her farm in West Texas, and God was there with her every day that she woke up until the day that she died. And God was there every day when my father woke up and when he died. And God is with me every day until the day I die. And God will be there in the presence of others that are these children in here until they die. Isn't that amazing? That God is always there. Hey, I don't know what's going to happen to our country. I don't know. Neither do you. Anybody besides me worried about it? Yeah. But I do know one thing. God will be there with us. God will be there tomorrow. Doesn't matter what system we're under. Doesn't matter what happens. God will be right beside me and right beside you as long as we hold on to his hand. God is always going to be there. So then this weird part of the psalm comes, and that is, all of a sudden it comes into mind of David, what about those people that hate God, that don't care about God, that are against God? And David says, I wish you would just slay the wicked, God. Starts talking about the wicked. I wish, I can't believe people hate you. He calls them wicked. He calls them bloodthirsty men. He calls them people that speak against God. He calls them God's enemies here. And they take God's name in vain. They don't have any respect for God. And it just gets all over David that there are people that have no respect for God. And he says, Lord, do I not hate them like I hate you? Do I not loathe these people who rise up against you? Well, I don't know what to do with that. I don't think that's the right attitude. David's just telling God how he felt. Have you ever had a bad attitude and been afraid to tell God about it? You think God already knew you had a bad attitude? He does, doesn't he? So if you've got a bad attitude, it's okay to tell God about it. He already knows it anyway, all right? So David maybe had a little bit of a bad attitude here. But the final part of this verse, I touched the wrong button here. It's hard for old men that can't walk and chew gum at the same time. This is the thing that he ended up with, which is a good place. You know, the first part of the psalm says, "Oh Lord, you have searched me and you have known me. I know you know everything about me." And so finally at the end of this prayer, David says, "Okay, God, go ahead. I know that you know everything about me, so go ahead. Just see everything. Ugly, good, bad, indifferent, see it all. Search me, know my heart." God already knows my heart. "Test me and know my anxieties. You know what I'm afraid of. You know it all. See if there is any wicked way in me," and he knows the things that are in me that are wicked. But this last phrase, "Lord, I'm trusting you to lead me in the way everlasting." You know me. Help me to be better. Help me to be like you want me to be. Isn't that a great psalm? Look, paste that last part up there that's on the screen right now. Paste that on your mirror. And every day when you get up, pray that little prayer. "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me. And today, Lord, lead me in the everlasting way." I love you. I appreciate you. Serve God this week. See you later.